when you find your purpose, that specific thing, that's the being very specific. It opens up the possibility to infinity. It's yeah. It's like the Alberti perspective. That fixed point in perspective is the gateway to infinity. Is the eye of God. So that's how they see it. That's the crux of being human. It's like with limitation, there's infinite possibility. You know what I mean? For me, it's that journey helping me to fortify my mind, and just like expect more of myself. And that's another thing that, it's amazing. Well, I guess I'll just start like from my accent. I guess you can already surmise I'm not a native of Western Mass. I grew up originally in Kingston, Jamaica. Um, Let me date myself, 1978. Ooh. Yeah. I moved here a couple of years ago because I got married. My wife moved here for college, and I moved with her. Back in Jamaica, whenever I go, hang out with my friends that I grew up with. One friend in particular would say, like, you've been drawing all your life. When church was going on, you'd be scribbling. So we always knew you'd want to do this. And I was like, I only just knew that. I grew up, um, in one of the poorest parts in Kingston, like, like real ghetto. Like when you hear like "Welcome to Jamrock," and you're seeing the zinc fences and the shanty towns, um, kind of somewhere like that. Very violent, although I'm very thankful I did not see a lot of it. Yeah, I had a very conservative upbringing like most Jamaicans. Went to church, I played music in church, you know, and went to arts. And then when I went to art school, everything changed. You found like, okay, you weren't that weird kid anymore because everybody here was weird. I got a full scholarship from the government of Jamaica to go to the New York Academy of Art. Yeah, and that was so amazing. I can't even begin to describe how much that changed my life and how it's still, the effect of being in New York, you know, affected my trajectory or what I thought about art or what I thought I knew. After doing it for a while, it starts to be something that you need to do. So I realized, like, because currently I teach at the academy at Charlemont, and I'm also like an adjunct um, art teacher at New England College. Um, yeah, so I realized like I am the best of myself, best husband, best dad, best son, when I can get to exercise my demons. And that's what I tell my students, that that is part what art has to be for you, because it has to be something, I think, that you're grappling with, something that you're trying to tackle, and then you kind of solve those kind of preoccupations through your practice. I think anything meaningful, it has to come through struggle, and then you come to the other side of it, and you get an epiphany, and then somebody sees that same thing too, and then there's this kind of thing that happens. This kind of serendipitous moment. Somebody's reading your work and like they get it, they feel it. So my opportunity to see painting only happened when I went to college. So growing up, what I had was Batman, Superman, Spider Man, and if you can look at the figures, you can see them move. Yeah, I used to copy Spider Man a lot, and he still is my favorite superhero, just because Peter Parker embodies everything what it means to be human, but at the same time, he's different from Superman, where Superman, Clark Kent is the alter ego, but the alter ego for Peter Parker is Spider Man. He happens to be Spider Man. In the course of living his life, he happened to be Spider Man. Batman is a different ethos too, you know. Um, but yeah, and it's like the Hulk is like all of these characters embody like a kind of philosophical way to view the world and who you are and who you identify as. So I guess I identify as Peter Parker more. So that's weird. I never thought about it before. But yeah, cause like my art journey, I've been doing art all my life. But it's not until like maybe after my son was born, I had a real life crisis because baby comes in, you're like, oh crap, my life is not my own anymore. So I think it's at that inflection point that I hit. I really resolved in my mind, this is what I want to do, you know, and I just went full on into it, and it's been a lovely journey ever since. I mean, yeah, I love painting. It makes me salivate. I don't know. It gives me like a visceral reaction. I mean, I have it for good and bad because like when I saw my first abstract work when I was like 20, it's, I had a visceral reaction to like it's a very cerebral act because your mind telling your hand telling the brush and the paint what to do. But and in a certain extent, because it travels so long and because it's so attached, to to your most sensitive periphery, your hand. Think of all the things your hand does, how it feels, how it touches. Because of the distance with COVID, it makes it even more precious and hyper real. So taking that into consideration and framing that with the art practice of painting with your hand or drawing, that sensitivity, it responds to everything if the surface is different. So the mode of expression starts to from your mind to your hand. It just starts to extrapolate like a fractal kind of, and then all of the possibilities when you start restricting the hand with the mind, kind in a sense. I mean, I do representational work, but I still kind of loose. I let it go. So that's what it feels like to me. It's like sheer and utter freedom to be able to, because I can't see these things in my mind necessarily, but I feel them. And that to me is like even better than copying what's exactly in my head. It's like experience something new, going on a new path and being like, wow, when I look at it, I just get excited. Like, I hope people can feel it too. So I love it. I love it. I love the journey, and that's just me. And I love the risk. I like, will this painting fail when I do it? Over the years, your intuition starts to get a little better, so you know when to pull away, when to stop. But I like failing at it too. I like crashing it. There's a simple way how bodies move together, and it makes sense. And when you put them together, it makes sense. Um, why did all of these diverging things happen in the work? Um, it happens because I'll go back to what I said before. Usually, I'm just talking about one thing, like this painting behind you. It's called "How Horrid My Perception of Me When I See Me Through Your Eyes." It's a long title, but if you start thinking about it, it's my perception of me, or your perception of me when I see me through your eyes. So I'm thinking you might be seeing me this way, but so it's like a very dissonant thing, but it just happens in a snapshot. Like you see somebody, you don't know them, all of these things, whether from movies, da 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 da, yeah, boom, and you form a reaction, a visceral reaction, whether it's in your conscious mind or not. Your body moves, your body, So I was just talking about that, and then like trying to, I, I, I made my lips bigger and distorted it even more because I'm talking about subtly all of that kind of history, like the Sambo characters and all of that kind of stuff, from Disney and all of that kind of stuff. But then somewhere in between it, there's this person. That's why I wanted it to feel like a photograph, because a photograph carries it, is almost like a legal receipt to say this thing actually happened, and then I'm encasing it, I'm embedding it like with the scheme of a slave ship, but then in the slave ship, instead of the bodies, it's Paisley patterns, where we're talking about not only the body got transported, but this whole kind of way of life, of thinking, of being, got transported to the new world too. And then encased in all of that flash, that moment, you know, you as a black person, you feel like that's how they see me, the stereotype. But it's what does it mean? So then that goes back to why are the different figures in these different actions? Is because I'm still talking about one action, but if you start to unpack that one action, like um like a leap. What is a leap? Like at this one. What's a leap? What's a euphoric leap into infinity? It can happen in many different ways, but we're all talking about the same thing. So I'm trying to give a more nuanced view just to one kind of simple, itty bitty kind of thing. Like this one. Um, it's called Memory and a Dream. It's the only first and only plane I've ever painted, but it kind of sparked everything else. Yeah, it's one moment like you're in a plane. The scenario is you're in a plane, you're dreaming, you fall asleep, it crashes, you die. You wake up, you're back in the plane, it careens off the runway, you barely escape death. You wake up, taxis on the runway, nothing happens. What's real? My argument is like everything is real according to quantum mechanics and probability and stuff. Everything is real, everything happened, nothing is negated. All of them amplify and talk about themselves. That one moment. So that's kind of in a long roundabout way how my head works and why you always see like multiple stuff because um, everything is connected. Just like how I talk. You must have gotten the rhythm of how I speak now. That one thing leads to another. So nothing is ever like a singular thing, you know. Mythology, yeah. Um, for me, context is always important, and this goes back to like my art school upbringing, like where you try to situate yourself within a certain genre part of art to say this is it goes back to the whole beauty of art making and why you are as an artist. And for me, I've always been interested in history, as you probably can tell, like where, because I'm interested in where we're going, and the only way you can really get a sense of where you're going is by kind of knowing the past, the history. And so that's the history of painting, just the general history of the West, the history of the African diaspora, history of Jamaica, um, my family history, portrait with my mom behind you, you know. Um, yeah, so for me, and then I might, so the work starts like this. I have an idea whether it's jumping off the pier. Then I start to think, what does that mean? What does it mean to me? What is jumping off the pier? Because it's not a new thing. People have been doing this, especially boys, men, and then it starts to go out. And then now I'm realizing, like, it's kind of why I'm fixated on that. It's kind of like Icarus, where you have this thrust, and that's what always a jump out into space is. It's a thrust up and then coming down. But the thing is, these guys never hit the ground. They're in water, so it's like a cocoon that envelops you. So that's why more is kind of like Icarus to me, because he's flying, he's falling. But I don't think the story talks about him crashing though. You know, I don't. I need to reread it, but yeah, but that's why I like that human ability to go towards the sun, to go towards your best self, you know. Whether you crash or fall, I know the wings melted, you know. Um, that's the complexity of it, cause it's not really a fail, cause it's like the Wright brothers, like how many tries they did, you know.
Yeah, right.
Cause I'm sure like the next time Icarus probably got wings and doing, he's going to change it because of the thing. So I don't really see it as failing. And I was listening to this CrossFit um guy. He's like the most winning coach. He's got the most and was talking about, I never see things as failing. There's no failing. It's always something that you need to tweak in order to go. So that's what I took, so you can't say they're falling. And I asked my son, is like, what are they doing? He's like, they're falling. But then falling for me is never pejorative, you know. You fall to get up to do it again, and so yeah, I mean, I'm still like using COVID as an armature. Um, More so, I'm not talking directly about COVID in these works, but they are a direct reaction to the lockdowns, being locked down, the body being locked down. But does that mean the mind, the soul, the spirit has to be locked down? Does Can you still be free? But then, in a sense, that's still talking about the same questions with the old work with slavery, identity. Does somebody perception of me lock me down? No. You know, does my idea of myself lock me down? It probably can, but can I be free though? And so it's still like a yearning for freedom. Until I have a number in my head that I want to do, maybe 20 of them, because I really want to push it until like I'm like done, So it's still exciting. I'm learning more about color, but what I want to say with color, because color is such a mysterious thing. So yeah, I'm enjoying this right now, and it's probably going to carry over to 2022. So it's interesting. The Chinese proverbs may live in interesting times. I think we're there, and it's hella sweet. I love it.